it is a symptom of this trickle-down effect from colonization. And I can't wait to share it. I have some upcoming kind of content that I'm hoping to share soon of how colonization and capitalism and supremacy has really like trickled down in so many ways into our society, into our lives. And, mental health, our mental health and trauma is just like one piece of that, right? It's one symptom of this bigger systemic, all these systemic problems that we have experienced since.
Join us as we explore the hidden histories of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander people. Together, we hope to provide healing and strengthen cultural pride. This is Roots Reclaimed.
Aloha nui kākou. My name is Lilinoe and I am the project manager for the Ohana Center of Excellence for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Behavioral Health. And I'm so excited to be bringing you today's episode of our Roots Reclaimed podcast entitled Empowered Healing, Reconnecting Through Kānaka-Centered Therapy. In this episode, I sit down with Native Hawaiian licensed marriage and family therapist Anuhea St. Laurent, who is also the founder of the company Kānaka to Kānaka. We talk about the importance of reclaiming cultural identity and reconnecting to one's roots through culturally aligned therapy, which starts by finding a therapist who understands one's worldviews, values, and offers a sense of comfort and familiarity. We also discuss the growing need for more Native Hawaiian therapists, challenges around stigma and seeking support, and how cultural reconnection can help empower people on their healing journey. Anuhea also reflects with us on her own experience navigating her identity while learning Western behavioral health practices and how she integrates both worlds into her work today. Mahalo nui Anuhea for sitting down with us for this episode of our Roots Reclaimed podcast. Aloha nui, my name is Lilinoe and I'm the project manager for the Ohana Center of Excellence. I'm really excited to be here today talking with Anuhea, who runs the Kānaka to Kānaka Instagram page. And I was wondering actually if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your practice. And I know I really wanted you to come on and talk a little bit about your focus on culturally aligned therapy. So if you wouldn't mind sharing just a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got into that work.
I've been in practice for just a few years now, although I've worked for a few nonprofit organizations since I graduated from grad school about 12 years ago. And it kind of just evolved naturally into working with Kanaka Maoli. Personally, I was always interested in understanding psychology and behavior because of my own ohana and just wanting to understand myself and kind of the things going on in my own family dynamics. And so I started kind of learning about psychology in high school, and that, went on and on into grad school. And it wasn't until I had my own ohana right after grad school that I really started to think about the things that I was taught in school formally with psychology, and how like some things aligned with Native Hawaiian culture and some things didn't. And so just a lot of questions came up. And as I grew into motherhood, I started having just this deep this deep desire to connect more deeply with culture, and going through many challenges too of like that transition into motherhood. And I think that's a big one for a lot of parents in general. The shift in the mindset becomes more focused on future generations, right? And I think naturally we become more motivated to be intentional with our lives and the things that we're teaching, and we start to question like, oh, where did this tradition or belief or holiday come from? Like, simple things like, why do we even have the tooth fairy? Like, where did that come from? And do I want to teach my kids that you just get free money from, like little things like that, to like bigger things like, organized religion and Christianity and Christmas, right? Or so many things started for me, at least personally, come to the surface through motherhood, that I started to question a lot of the things that, as you grow up, you just kind of accept are the norm as an adult, right? And especially as a makua, you can start to question, like, where did this come from? What do I really know about this? And do a lot of research and exploration, and then try to figure out, well, what do I believe now? And what do I want to pass on to my keiki? And so that like natural progression into motherhood and parenthood, I think really motivated me to connect more deeply through to my Native Hawaiian identity. And so that happened in a lot of ways, but the first like really foundational shift was having our keiki attend Punana Leo and really reconnecting with Olelo Hawaii. No matter what avenue you're trying to reconnect to culture, I think there's this peeling back the layers of like shame, right? It's all related to trauma, because if you trace it all back, it all stems from colonization and Western contact, and how pieces of our connections to culture were fragmented, right? When we were displaced from Aina, we were displaced from Kaiaulu, we were displaced from each other and our spiritual connections to Akua. And for me, that transition into motherhood naturally made me question so many things that made me really start to delve deeper into my identity as a Kanaka. And that was part of my personal healing with a lot of things, but especially after my third keiki, I had postpartum depression and anxiety. I come from a family, and part of my generational trauma, since Western contact, is a lot of anxiety that was passed on to me through my lineages. And trying to heal that so I don't pass too much of that on to my keiki, because I know inevitably some will pass on, right? We can't fix everything in every generation. It's going to be gradual. Healing happens gradually, as like trauma is passed on gradually, I think, to a lot of the times. And so after I kind of took a pause from working in the mental health field to raise my keiki, I was home for like 6 years. I gained a lot of just personal life experience that I felt was so valuable to bring to my work as a therapist. I came back and I was looking for somebody to mentor me to finish up my licensure hours so I could be in private practice. And I was having a hard time finding somebody who was Native Hawaiian. I was like, and then, I got connected with a couple of people. Our ohana had also moved during the COVID pandemic, and that was we had always kind of thought about moving. We had always wanted to move I'm from Kaneohe, Ko'olapoko, and we moved here to Puna on Hawaii Island, and it was just like the right time, but also, it was out of necessity too. Things were so expensive. Our rent was going to be raised. We couldn't picture ourselves like we were just in the rat race, right? And we're still trying to make ends meet, right? Like you don't make a whole ton of money being a therapist. Nobody goes into this work, to get rich, right? And I was having a hard time finding somebody who was Kanaka, who was working as a therapist, like really who I thought could help me in the way that I wanted to and needed to be helped. And there's a lot of, nonprofit organizations doing great work that are sharing, culturally based values and practices. But I didn't see it a lot in the therapy space. And I was like, oh, how come? Yeah. Well, because in school we're taught in the Western way, right? But when I was doing so much thought and research, I was like, so much of Western psychology is extracted from indigenous practices, right? You can like trace it back to, this actually comes from like Eastern Asian philosophies, and this comes from, these indigenous peoples. And I just kept feeling this call to be that person. I don't know. There's this shift that happens, I feel like, as you're getting older, that's like, oh, somebody should do this. Somebody should do that, right? And then you're like, oh, man, like, we are that somebody now. We're like me. That generation. Yeah. And it's like, oh, but I don't want to be that somebody. Like, my nature is not to be forward facing and to put myself out there. Like, it's been really difficult. I've been working through a lot of personal insecurities and anxiety putting myself out there. And as we know, there's a whole spectrum of opinion from our lahui on all these really significant issues that people are so passionate about, right? So to be out there presenting any kind of mana'o on anything is putting yourself out there for potential criticism, right? But I just kept feeling that call, and I talked to a couple of my mentors and peers, and they're like, if you're feeling this call, like your kupuna are choosing you for a reason. I've been experiencing a lot of personal growth as I've been stepping into this role, and so many life lessons that are just parallel to the lessons that, a lot of my clients are going through. And I don't know if I answered the question.
Yeah, so much. Yeah, I just now I was as you were sharing, I was thinking about that concept like koho'ia. You're chosen. Like your kupuna are telling you this is the way, that this is the path. This is what your function can be within the lahui, and I think that's beautiful. And it kind of reminds me like my own healing journey of healing from long-term addiction and mental health issues and justice involvement and all those things, and that return to culture, finding someone who you can connect with that understands your culture, the importance of your culture to you and your healing. Like that is such a crucial part of continued healing along the healing journey, because there's supports here and there. There's some supports for the early parts of your healing journey if you're going through treatment, or you're you're looking at those kinds of services. But healing is a lifelong journey, and it changes. It goes through these like seasons basically, and it continues to change and evolve as you continue to change and evolve. And it's so crucial to have a connection to somebody, like have a therapist that can support you in that healing journey, that understands your cultural worldview and what that means to you in your healing journey. And so I've been so drawn to the stuff that you post on Instagram, and your whole, like all of your mana'o around healing and reconnecting to culture and things like that, because there's not a lot of therapists out there that do have this, that embrace the a more culturally grounded philosophy. And I hear it so often from the people around me, and people that reach out to the Ohana Center of Excellence as well, that they're looking for people that hold their identities when they're looking for therapists. They want to be able to talk to someone that holds their identity, that understands their worldview. And I think you embody that so beautifully in the work that you do, and it makes my na'au all like warm and fuzzy to know that there is such you have such a healing space that you've created for your clients, for the people that you help to heal. I was wondering if you could kind of, I think you kind of touched on this, but how you navigate that intersection of like cultural practices and Western mental health frameworks. And I ask this because we hear that what you shared a lot as people are entering into the behavioral health field, and we're educated through a strictly Western view. And for myself as well, going into school and now trying to work on getting my license as well, it's such a Western focused education system, and the certifications and the testing, it's all very Western focused, and we want to increase our Kānaka in the field. So how do we support them in embracing their cultural identity as they're navigating through these Western frameworks? And I think there's a lot that we can learn from your own pathway and how you've kind of put all of this together.
Well, mahalo, first of all. There's so many things that I thought of while you were just kind of sharing all of that. Like, one is, I'm sure there are other therapists out there who are also Kanaka who are doing this as well. They just might not be as visible or marketing
That's
themselves in this way. And so, since I have been like on the Instagram doing this, which has only been for a short time, the demand has been huge. Like, I've just been overwhelmed. And it's really made me realize that, one, there are other therapists, or people in grad school pre-licensed coming to me saying, oh, can I work with you? And then there are our clients who are like, my wait list is so long. And I'm like, I need to refer out. Like, I'm not specialized to help every Kanaka with every single issue, right? So I'm like, okay, I need to create a directory. I need to connect with more Kanaka therapists so we can expand like the accessibility of care out there. And it is a bit overwhelming. There's like this sense of urgency, like our people need help yesterday, like years
Yeah.
ago, right? And that is part of my focus now is like, how can I connect with more people who are already doing the work? And how can we work alongside each other to help our people? Which is very non-Western, right? Like Western way is like, you can work for my group practice and when you leave, you can't take any of your clients, even though it's in the best interest of the clients to remain with the person they already
Yeah.
have a good relationship, right? You sign these non-compete agreements that say, and it's all for what? For profit, for capital gain, right? That's why I love the work that Travis is doing over at Imua Health
Oh,
Group.
yeah.
He's literally helping pre-licensed therapists get in the door, like learn about private practice, open up a private practice, and then take all your clients with you because he realizes Hawaii needs more providers. We need more of that. Like that's part of my vision is how can maybe I do that in the future when I have the capacity, but make it, very focused on Kanaka therapists and Kanaka clients.
Yeah.
Although my heart, like us as Kanaka, we're all mixed, right? There's many, like very few of us who are what full Kanaka. I mean, I know we're not supposed to like fragment ourselves in that way, but the demand is there, the urgency is there to try and fill these gaps between Western and Indigenous and in this modern world that we live in, right? Because we're also navigating healthcare systems, Western healthcare systems because people can't afford to pay out of pocket. And we would love to give these services for free, but we got to pay our bills too
Yeah.
because I'm not living 100% sustainably yet. I'm not sure if I ever will in my lifetime. So, navigating the healthcare system, it's like, okay, I'm realizing I try to be that person who can understand generally the background of the Kanaka who are coming to me in therapy. I'm still not going to know all the things for every single client, but I do think that being trauma informed helps so that, if Kanaka do come to me and they're talking about this aspect of their cultural identity that I don't have experience with, I'm not going to pretend like I do. I'm going to ask them, right? But like there's a general sense of shared understanding about the culture,
Yeah.
right? That they don't have to explain themselves or they don't feel like, they have to hide that part of themselves or be ashamed of that part of themselves. How do I connect to the Western framework within like
Or now,
cultural?
how do you navigate it? I guess like how within your work or as you were in school or as you continue even in your therapeutic practice is
Yeah.
do you still encounter it? Do you still encounter the need to navigate between those spaces, or now that you're in private practice, is it solely, can you focus primarily on indigenous frameworks?
Yeah, I think in private practice you do have a lot more flexibility. I myself allow clients to utilize insurance. So there is, I do have to submit notes. Insurance companies still get the final say on whether they pay for clients to have those services. So, different insurance companies still do require you to like do certain Western therapy approaches are more acceptable or understood by them. So in a way, you kind of have to explain the cultural practices that, you might be using with a client in a way that they'll understand through a Western lens.
Yeah.
So a lot of the work I do with folks is like, let's talk story and you tell me about like what are your mo'olalos, like what are your belief systems and your attitudes around, I don't know, your self worth. Where does that come from? Tell me stories about when you were insecure, or you didn't feel like you were enough, or where does that come from? Let's trace it back, right?
Yeah.
How can we draw on the strengths of your kupuna? Like, what are the strengths within your lineage? What do you know about your makua and your kupuna and the places that you come from? How can we kind of connect the dots there culturally? And how do I justify that with insurance? Oh, narrative therapy, right? You kind
Yeah.
of like, you kind of it's kind of like you're playing the game of how do we navigate this Western world that we're living in using Western insurance, and still provide people the cultural alignment in therapy that they're asking for or needing or wanting, you know? And it's hard because we're all in different places on the spectrum of cultural identity and like what we know and what we're craving and what we're yearning for.
Yeah.
And so, like, some clients want that a lot. Some clients are just kind of dipping their toes into it. And so I kind of take the lead of the client if they're coming to me talking about these different things or wanting it. And more as I'm, marketing myself this way, I'm getting the clients who are very involved and connected to their cultural identities and wanting this, to be a big part of their healing practice. So
I guess one of the other things I also kind of want to ask you, have you ever thought about building a group of Kanaka therapists to kind of support one another and serve the greater need that is kind of coming right now?
I have so many ideas of the things I want to do. I have a long list of things that I feel like could fill the gaps of the needs that are out there. Part of my work too is balancing it with how do I also do this work and keep myself healthy. In the first year of like transitioning into private practice, I like physically got sick. When I was in grad school and even afterwards, just kind of like the norm for therapists to see like 30 or 40 clients a week. And for myself, like no matter what kind of boundaries you try to set with your clients and like all the self-care stuff you try to do, for me, I was like, oh, how do people do this? This is like too much for me. And navigating the current climate in the world and all the things going on, it's just like, how do you balance caring for yourself, keeping yourself well so you can sustain this work, right? I mean, I'm sure you wear so many hats, you're engaged in so much important good work, but it does take a toll on us, right? Like, so I do tend to also attract, like a lot of my clients are like CEOs or like they run nonprofit organizations, are very engaged in Hawaiian communities, like very focused on this work. And they too are also trying to figure out how do I balance that, right? Caring for self while caring for others. And I would love to eventually open up a group practice that really mentors and nurtures other Kanaka clinicians and focuses on Kanaka clients. I would love to also like usher in therapists that speak Ula Hawaii. My kids go to Kaiapuni, and we're looking at the future of like what other jobs can they have to perpetuate our culture and our language that are not just like becoming kumu at Kaiapuni. And we're seeing that now, right? That those keiki are taking those skills and they're integrating it into this Western, post-contact colonized Hawaii that we live in, and we are re-indigenizing Hawaii, right? And how can we do that in the mental health space and the healthcare space in general here? My PCP speaks Ola Hawaii with our keiki, and it's like, it was amazing that we found her, And so we're seeing it more and more that like, as more generations go through Kaiapuni or, whatever, hula halau, right? Like generations of hula halau or whatever the practice is, the cultural practice is, like we will take those skills and we integrate it into every aspect of our life, because that ike that we learn, it does overlap into like the lessons that we learn, they overlap into everything, right? Lessons we learned from Aina, that's on the list. Also, I think I'm moving more towards like facilitating more groups, because I'm just recognizing people need and are creating pilina with other Kanaka. And I'm just one person. I'm also limited, if I'm just working one-on-one with folks, I can only see so many people. But if we do group facilitation, I can help more people. And I'm not the only one helping people. Like they're gaining perspective of everybody in the group that brings so much wisdom and knowledge and experience that can facilitate in the healing of everyone, right? So I think I'm moving more towards that right now.
as you were talking too, I was thinking about when you're sharing a little bit about like how many clients are seen on average, and that like what it is that we do to kind of, because it's a lot of mana, right, that we're engaging in. A lot of energy is being shared in a space, and it's a lot to hold, with your own, especially with the trauma that we carry within our bodies of our own past, and all, and intergenerational cultural and historical traumas. And what I realized also in school, as you were mentioning, I wasn't really taught about how to cleanse myself of it. Like, I think we spent like maybe one class on like what trauma stewardship should look like. But when I think about it from a cultural perspective and different cleansing and protection rituals, and I wish I had more experience around those and how to ready myself for some of the work that we engage in. I was kind of just wondering, are there rituals that you kind of find comforting within this work to help kind of cleanse yourself and be ready for the next energy energy transfer kind of thing?
I wasn't taught that either in grad school or with many of my supervisors afterwards in the nonprofits that I was working with. It was kind of just assumed and normalized that you would just keep going, right? And if we think back to traditional Hawaiian culture, the healers in the community, all the kahuna, no matter what kind of kahuna it was very intentional that you cannot do any healing if you yourself are not healed, if you yourself are not in the right, if you're not pono, right, in right relationship, whether that's physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, especially. And that one honestly is so tricky for me because it's like, how many of us are fully healed right now in this world that we live in?
Yeah.
Yet like the work still needs to go on. And so how can we do our best to try to be pono with ourselves, with our relationships, and caring for ourselves and still, care for others. But yeah, so some things that I have learned along the way, especially in the past few years, and some things I've learned from my clients who are engaged in really important work like iwi kupuna and stuff, that you have to have pale, right? So I've learned specific pule. I pule for myself and I pule for clients in between. I have like my little kind of, I call it like a transition meditation where, and I also create gaps between my clients now, which I never used to do. I also limit how many clients I can take now. So really learning to set boundaries, right? Which before I just was like not doing. And to be realistic, realistic is like the wages that I was getting paid pre-license and in the beginning is like, well, we've got to pay the bills, got to just go, right? So there's very realistic motivations to push yourselves over your limits, right? And all of our people know that, trying to live here in Hawaii and afford to live here and stay here and not get pushed out, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm still looking for mentorship. There's one kumu that I really want to work with that I'm trying to wait for his program to open a new cohort soon, and I really hope to be invited to, be a part of that. But yeah, it's hard when it's like you want to honor traditional cultural learning, which comes from lineage and kupuna, and also because we've been colonized, because things have been fragmented, because therapy is a Western concept and not necessarily cultural, right? It's not lomi, it's not la'o la'o, it's not ho'oponopono necessarily, right? It's like, in a way, I am trying to create something new that is as connected to culture as I can possibly connect it, but it's not traditionally exactly Hawaiian. Yeah, sometimes I get a little anxious about that, right? That people might be like, well, that's really not Hawaiian what you're trying to do. But my intentions are pure. I hope people see that. And I try to do it with as much care and reverence as I can. And I don't know all the things. I'm not a cultural practitioner. I'm not fluent in Olelo Hawaii yet. And I'm not the expert of other people. I really hope that comes through in my messaging is like I empower each Kanaka to be the expert of themselves and to connect with whoever's around them that gives them strength to connect to their stories, their lineages, their special lahi, their amapua, their kupuna, in whatever ways gives them strength to be a better expert of themselves and care for themselves in the ways that they need to be cared for at this time. And so I just see myself as a vessel of healing. I don't consider myself a healer at all. I just kind of facilitate. And I don't think I share any ike that's my own. I just think I pass on the things that I learn through like my own perspective, you know, and I present it to people so that they can consider it for themselves. And I don't think I pressure people to take on my mana'o. I think I just present it to them in a way of like, this is what I know and this is what I've learned and this is kind of where I've learned it from. What do you think about that? How does this resonate with you? You can take it or leave it, right? If it feels aligned, great. If it doesn't, no pressure, right? Like dismiss it. I think that's a major difference between my approach and maybe some of the approaches I've seen of other therapists out there, you know, and certainly things my clients have come to me with and said like, oh, I didn't like my therapist because X, Y, and Z. I'm looking for a therapist who instead is like this instead, right?
Yeah. I mean, when I was looking for a therapist, I also wanted to find a Native Hawaiian therapist so that I didn't have to explain every single part of, how I kind of encountered the world. And I think that was really important to me. And I did find one, which I'm still with, because of that, I can say Hawaiian concepts, I can talk about practices, and I don't have to spend half of the time explaining what they are and why they're important to me. And that's such a valuable part of therapy. I will still say it like a million times because I know how important that is. I hear in friends of mine that are still looking for someone to connect with in that way. Yeah, I think you do amazing work. So I love that mana'o about being a conduit for the ike coming from ancestors and the ike that you've come into contact with along your own journey. And and it sounds like it's kind of what you're sharing, like it helps people to strengthen their identities, and do you see like people as they start to strengthen their identities, do you see them looking for more opportunities to kind of learn and continue to strengthen that in different ways?
The growth I see in individuals really gives them this confidence and this empowerment, feeling like they are enough to enter spaces that maybe before they were a little too hila to enter. I think most specifically with their own ohana, right? Because a lot of the individuals coming to therapy, I think the most common challenge is like, oh, I'm learning all this stuff. It's helping me. But then I still struggle with some of my ohana because they're not learning all this stuff. I wish they could learn all this stuff, but maybe they're not open to it, right? I think that's the hard part, is that sometimes all of this inner work that clients are doing on themselves, they might not necessarily see the fruits of that labor in their immediate ohana, like with their parents or their siblings or whoever they might have a little pilikia with, because maybe those people are not open to it yet. Maybe some of them might not ever be, right? There's still that stigma of mental health of like, oh, who are you going to talk to somebody, tell them all of our stories, but who is it for? Why do we do it? It's for generational healing, right?
Yeah.
It's for everyone who comes after us. And it is still bittersweet sometimes, I don't think I guess it's rare for people to see the healing effects and be like, okay, everything's great now, right? Of course, there are those moments, but the healing is more like, okay, well, everything's okay. Everything's okay. I have a little more joy. I have a little more confidence. I have more tools to navigate, this world that is still very challenging. And I have motivation that continues to build to keep doing this work, and to be consistent with it.
There's one more thing I wanted to touch on, actually a couple more things. But was about stigma, to talk a little bit about any challenges you might have faced in addressing like mental health stigma with your clients or communities, or maybe ohana, and how has there have been able to kind of make folks a little bit more comfortable with seeking kind of support within the therapy world or just talking to someone?
There are some clients who start therapy and you can tell like that first session that they're not totally sure that they're ready for it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes, after one session, they never come back or they're just not ready for it yet. So that stigma definitely still exists. Majority of my clients, though, they're there and they want to be there. Majority of my clients, they've already done therapy work before, or like they've studied psychology, or they've done the self-help books, or they've been in other avenues of healing culturally, like Umi or La'au Lafa'au, or they've learned in Hawaiian studies, or they've been in Kaiapuni or something like that. And so majority of my clients come to me and they're already sold on, I'm committed to my healing, whatever it takes. And I also want to say that therapy is just one little piece of the puzzle, right? There's so many other things that we can do to heal. But yeah, the stigma, yeah, I see that sometimes too with people who they sign up for the wait list when they're called, they don't actually start. Which is why I've been motivated to share more mental health education online on Instagram. I want to expand the accessibility of mental health education so that people can just look at it, see it, think about it. It's normalized a little bit. Maybe it's part of a conversation they have with somebody in their life, right? Because I understand that some people will never ever go to a therapist, right? But how can they just learn about these things and think about it a little bit? And maybe practice some of these things and try it out as an experiment and see if it works for them, So I think that's what I'm trying to do with the online mental health education stuff, is try to break that stigma that way, because it's very real. It's still there. But I think as things become a little more challenging in the world, I think people are realizing more and more that they're willing to seek other avenues of help and support that maybe before they weren't as open to. I think there's this gradual shift of people becoming more and more open to mental health conversations and support than, even 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And I know some of your most recent IG posts have really centered around that, like how colonization has impacted our self-identity, our self-sovereignty, and those kind of aspects. And we've had a few, I feel like, that have been just recent. Have you had a lot of responses from folks about, like wanting to, that really like that concept of how colonization has impacted our mental health and our well-being? Have you had a lot of responses about how that resonates with folks?
Yeah, I think I had a couple posts where there's a lot of engagement and got a lot of followers. I think like the ones that have got the most engagement really spoke to the differences between Western psychology and therapy versus more indigenous practices, and how my aim is to kind of bridge the gap between those two. If I could share with our lovely one thing, is that the mental health challenges that we all face today are not our fault. It is a symptom of this trickle-down effect from colonization. And I can't wait to share it. I have some upcoming kind of content that I'm hoping to share soon of how colonization and capitalism and supremacy has really like trickled down in so many ways into our society, into our lives. And our mental health and trauma is just like one piece of that, right? It's one symptom of this bigger all these systemic problems that we have experienced since. And I think Western psychology teaches us it's our fault. Like we should be able to just just change our mindset and just work hard and just overcome these things. And I think there's some truth to that. I don't think we are victims. I don't think our kupuna would see ourselves as victims. I think our lineages are ones of great resilience and strength, of just brilliance, right? Our kupuna were so smart. If you just think about everything that was happening during the overthrow and how they got around certain things and how they still communicated and how they were engaged politically, and they were so adaptable. And I want to motivate us to remember those parts of our stories, because I think it's easy to just say, well, we are the way we are because colonization. And that can be an excuse, or that can be a motivation to do something about it. Because I do still think it's our responsibility. It's our kuleana to do the best that we can with our situation for future generations, right? And so it's not our fault if we realize and understand more of our story of our people, then we will, there's some validation in that. I guess it alleviates some of the burden that some people feel, like, oh my gosh, this is so me, I'm supposed to fix it all by myself. But like, no, we're supposed to fix this in community. We're supposed to fix this in connections. Connections to each other, connections to Aina, connections to Akua, in community. Like, it's a kako thing. Right? I wish people understood that more. I hope my clients really understand that, by the time our work together is through.
Yeah, it was like I've seen a whole picture when you were explaining that right now, because we use the ahupua'a to kind of connect to those that kind of mana'o. And so as you were kind of sharing, like, I'm seeing all of these impacts within our land systems, within our ahupua'a, how it impacts ourselves, our families, our communities, our lahui as a whole. Is there anything that you would want to add, I guess, to kind of what we've talked about so far?
I think that was a lot. I'm getting kind of emotional just because I feel like there's so much to say and so much work to be done. The work will never be over,
Yeah, it won't.
But the work is so important.
I think being able to connect to people that want to do this work together, I think that there's so much beauty and strength in our connections to one another, so I'm so grateful to be connected with you, because I just love the work that you do, and I want to help support whatever the direction that you're going in. I'm down if you want to start like a Kānaka cohort kind of therapist group. Let's do it.
With all of our free time.
All of the free time, yeah. So much of it. Let's change the world, you know what I mean? And yeah, I think I'm just excited, to hear about the work that you're doing, and to continue to see the content that you create, because I think you're right. Like, it's shifting mindsets. It's creating resonance within people that may not have thought about therapy before. And I think you're shifting the narrative around therapy and how it's viewed too, because people can connect to therapy in a different way, and not just in a Western way anymore. Like, there is a more culturally grounded way to do it that can be more encompassing of our full identities, and not just Native Hawaiian culture, like you said, our full identities. We're all, many of us are mixed. I'm, no exception. Like, I'm very mixed myself, so being able to embrace fully who we are and realize the strength within our own cultural identities and what connects us to the world, to the Aina, to one another, to all the things. Being able to fully realize that in a different way is, I think, really valuable and incredibly meaningful. So mahalo for the work that you do every day.
And you as well. You're engaged in such meaningful work. I will say also, as kind of a disclaimer, I don't do all of that social media content by myself. I have shout out to Kohina Media. Those are my social media girls. We collaborate on, it is kind of the content and the information I want to share. Much of it is the main ideas and concepts that I want to share, but they make it all pretty and put it out there. Otherwise, I would never do it because I'm a little tech challenged, and but I'm learning to collaborate with other people and to connect with other people, and that's part of my journey too. Is that for so long I've thought I just have to do everything myself. That's part of my trauma, and I am trying to connect with more people to heal parts of my own trauma. And so this journey has been healing personally and expansive professionally, to start to branch out and make more connections.
Well, mahalo nui for just sharing your time and space and ike and mana and all the things in this space. Really want to mahalo you for all of that and all that you do.
Oh, mahalo to you as well.
Roots Reclaimed is a production of the AA&HPI Ohana Center of Excellence, a culturally centered behavioral health resource center aimed to empower Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities. To get access to resources, referrals, trainings, workshops, and so much more, visit us at aaandhpi-ohana.org. Mahalo.